You're busy, on your phone, finishing work, watching something, and your dog walks over, sits right in front of you, and just stares. You don't look up. Maybe you say, "Not now." Maybe you say, "Nothing at all." And after a minute, they walk away. Most people think nothing of it. Dogs are resilient. They shake things off. They'll be back in 5 minutes, wanting belly rubs, like nothing happened. But neuroscience tells a completely different story. What just happened in your dog's brain, in those few seconds of being ignored, is one of the most misunderstood psychological events in the entire human-animal relationship. And once you understand it, you will never absent-mindedly ignore your dog again. Let's start with what most people assume, that dogs don't really process rejection. They feel something for a second, then it evaporates. They're not humans. They don't have the mental architecture to take it personally. Here's the problem with that. In 2021, researchers at the University of Helsinki ran a study measuring cortisol levels in dogs across different social scenarios. One of those scenarios involved owners deliberately withholding attention, turning away, avoiding eye contact, not responding to their dog's bids for contact. The cortisol spike was immediate, not gradual, not delayed, immediate. Within minutes of being ignored by their owner, dogs showed measurable physiological stress responses, the same hormonal signature that appears during thunderstorms. During separation, during fear, your dog doesn't shrug it off. Their body registers it as a threat. But here's where it gets stranger, because it's not just what you do, it's who you are. The same researchers tested the same dogs with strangers performing the same avoidance behavior. The cortisol response was smaller, significantly smaller. The stress wasn't about being ignored in general. It was specifically about being ignored by you, because here's what your dog has done with you, whether you realize it or not. They've built an entire psychological model of who you are, your routines, your moods, your micro-expressions, the specific sound of your footsteps versus a stranger's, the way your breathing changes when you're stressed versus relaxed. Researchers at the University of Sussex found that dogs process human emotional sounds, laughter, crying, frustration, in a dedicated region of their brain, the same region that humans use to process emotional signals from other humans. Your dog doesn't just notice your mood. They have neurological hardware specifically built to read it. So when you go quiet, when you stop engaging, when the person their entire social world is organized around suddenly becomes unreachable, their brain doesn't file it under "owner is busy." It files it under something much more primal than that. Here's a question almost nobody asks. What does being ignored actually mean to an animal wired for pack survival? Because we have to understand what your dog fundamentally is, at a biological level. Not a pet, not a companion, an animal whose ancestors survived, or didn't, based entirely on their relationships with the group around them. In a wolf pack, social exclusion isn't awkward, it's lethal. An animal cut off from the group loses access to food, protection, warmth, and defense against predators. Being ignored by your pack isn't a minor social slight. It's the first warning sign that you're being pushed out, that your survival is at risk. Domestic dogs are not wolves, but those instincts didn't disappear. They were redirected. Onto us, you are your dog's pack, their entire social structure, their only social structure, in most cases. So when you ignore them, even for 5 minutes, even absent-mindedly, a very old part of their brain runs a very old calculation. And the output of that calculation is not "my owner is busy." It's closer to "something is wrong with my place in this world." Now here's the part that should genuinely stop you, because behavioral scientists have found that the way dogs respond to being ignored falls into distinct patterns, and those patterns tell you something profound about your relationship. Some dogs, when ignored, will try harder, paw at you, nudge, vocalize, escalate their bids for attention until they get a response. Any response, even a frustrated one. Researchers call this protest behavior, and it maps almost perfectly onto the protest behavior of a securely attached child who's been temporarily separated from their caregiver. It looks clingy, annoying even, but it's actually a sign of a fundamentally healthy bond. The dog believes connection is possible. They're still trying. Other dogs do something that looks, on the surface, much calmer. They walk away quietly. They find a corner. They lie down and stop seeking contact. Most owners see this and think, good, they're fine. They learned. But in attachment research, this pattern has a different name. It's called dismissive withdrawal. And in both human and animal studies, it's associated with a history of bids for connection going repeatedly unmet. The dog hasn't decided they're okay. They've learned that trying doesn't work. The quieter dog is not the less affected dog. They may be the more affected one. There's a study almost nobody talks about. In 2019, researchers ran a version of the classic still face experiment on dogs, except instead of mothers, they used dog owners. The still face experiment was originally designed to study human infants. A mother interacts warmly with her baby, then, on cue, goes completely expressionless. No reaction, no warmth, just a blank face. Infants find this so distressing that many begin crying within 90 seconds. When the same paradigm was adapted for dogs, the results were almost identical. Dogs exposed to their owner's still face showed immediate behavioral disruption. They tried to re-engage. They looked away in stress. Their body language shifted into the same signals seen during anxiety and uncertainty. And here's the detail that matters. The distress didn't fully resolve when the owner returned to normal interaction immediately after. The dog needed time to re-regulate. They needed repeated reassurance that the warmth was real and stable before their nervous system settled. A few seconds of emotional absence, not punishment, not cruelty, just blankness, left a detectable trace. Imagine what routine, habitual inattention does. Now, I want to tell you something that might reframe everything you think you know about your dog's behavior. A lot of the things owners find most frustrating, the demand barking, the pawing, the following you from room to room, the sitting on your feet, the appearing at your elbow every single time you open your laptop, are not personality quirks, they're communication. Every single one of those behaviors has a function. They're your dog's way of closing a distance that feels, to them, dangerously wide. And here's the dark irony. The most common response to those behaviors? Ignore them. Trainers will tell you to withdraw attention when a dog demands it, to avoid reinforcing pushy behavior. And, in a narrow operant conditioning sense, that's not wrong. But what the behavioral neuroscience tells us is that how you ignore matters enormously. A dog who is ignored while their attachment needs are chronically unmet is not learning patience. They're learning something about what the world is, about whether connection is reliable, about whether the most important relationship in their life can be trusted. The training literature and the attachment literature are, in many ways, in direct tension. And most owners, most trainers even, don't know that tension exists. Let's talk about what's actually happening in your dog's brain during those moments of ignored connection. When your dog approaches you for contact, their brain releases a spike of dopamine, the same anticipatory reward signal that fires before anything pleasurable. The approach itself is rewarding. The expecting of connection is neurologically exciting. And when connection is received, oxytocin, the bond molecule, the same neurochemical loop we talked about with eye contact and sleep. It activates here too, but when the approach is met with nothing, no eye contact, no touch, no verbal acknowledgement, the dopamine spike that preceded it gets paired with an absence of reward. Do that enough times, and something changes. Neuroscientists call it reward prediction error. The brain expected something, got nothing, recalibrated, applied to social bonding. That recalibration isn't neutral. it begins to reshape how the dog anticipates interactions, whether they approach with confidence or hesitation, whether they expect warmth or brace for emptiness. Your dog's brain is plastic. Every interaction is writing something. Now, before this feels too heavy, here's what the science also shows. Repair is fast. Startlingly fast. The same studies that documented cortisol spikes during owner-directed avoidance also tracked recovery. When owners re-engaged, genuine, warm, attentive engagement, cortisol levels normalized within minutes. The nervous system reset. Dogs are not keeping score the way humans do. They don't hold grudges. They're not building a case against you. What they are doing is continuously updating their model of the world based on what's happening right now. Which means the next time your dog walks over and sits in front of you, you don't need to overhaul your entire relationship. You don't need to feel guilty about every distracted moment you've ever had. You just need to look up, make eye contact, say their name, put your hand on them for 30 seconds. That's not nothing. To their nervous system, to their attachment system, to the neurochemical loop that runs between you, that 30 seconds is everything. There's one last thing I need to tell you, and it's the part of this conversation that almost nobody has. If your dog has stopped approaching you, if a dog who used to seek you out has quietly given up and you've noticed it and quietly accepted it, I want you to sit with that for a moment. Not with guilt, with information, because behavioral scientists who study canine attachment will tell you that a dog who has stopped seeking connection from their owner is showing one of the most significant welfare signals in the field. It doesn't mean the relationship is broken. It doesn't mean you're a bad owner. But it means something shifted, somewhere, somehow. And unlike almost any problem in the human-animal bond, it's almost always fixable. Dogs are wired for connection with us. At a genetic level, that pull doesn't disappear. It goes quiet, and quiet things can be woken back up. So the next time your dog walks over and stares at you while you're on your phone, remember what's actually happening. They're not begging, they're not being needy, they're not demanding. They're doing the thing that 15,000 years of coevolution built them to do. They're reaching for their safe person. And whether you reach back, and how, is writing something in the most sophisticated social brain in the animal kingdom. One that was shaped across millennia, specifically to love you. If this changed how you see your dog, subscribe and tell me in the comments, does your dog follow you from room to room? Because the science behind why they do that is even more surprising than anything in this video. And that one is coming next.